It is time for another professional best of 3 series in StarCraft 2, and what I got for you today is a Protoss versus Terran between two players who are widely considered to be some of the very best, if not the very best, in their respective race. Spawning here in game number 1 on Odyssey LE in the southeast corner, playing with the red Protoss probes, we have none other than Stats. And his opponent spawning in a cross position, playing with the blue Terran SCVs, he goes by the nickname of Innovation. Now, of course, both of these guys are qualified as well for the BlizzCon Grand Finals coming up very shortly. I am really looking forward to it because I think that both of the guys in this series here today may very well be some of the top contenders for their race when it comes to obtaining the victory and therefore the World Championship Series overall. I think that it's probably a toss-up between, Hero and Stats when it comes to the Protoss pieces. I mean, they are very close in skill, and of course they are absolute, monsters when it comes to playing the Protoss matchups. But really for Innovation, I mean, there's definitely a couple of great Terran players that are also qualified. Like, for example, Gumiho, like, for example, of course, TY as well. But I would definitely place Innovation a little bit above these other guys, just because the guy has been so very consistent over the last couple of years. But if anyone can take him out, I think that most definitely Stats is the man, up for the job right here. So I'm wondering here how this goes down. One important thing to keep in mind as well, right, is that these guys are practicing their butts off. They will try and obtain the World Championship Series no matter what. So since that is coming up very shortly, right, do they want to show their A-game in this tournament right here today? This was played a couple of days ago. Of course, that means that it's very close to leading up to BlizzCon. Do they really want to show their A-game right now? If they've been practicing some wild strategies, in particular, for example, for Odyssey LE, maybe Stats came up with something wild to start off with the gold base, for example. Are you gonna show that right now in an online tournament? I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. So we always have that mind game right here to keep in mind as well. But regardless, let's have a quick look at what both of these players are starting off with in this series so far. Very quick double gases here for the Protoss player. It does look like indeed he is gonna go for that very quick Stargate play, something that Stats has been favoring through 2017 thus far. And of course, we did see him take that very quick natural nexus right here as well. In the meantime, on the other side of the map, very standard setup here as well for Innovation. Going for that scout here with the SCV, and while he didn't go for the Reaper, which he likes going for in many of the situations, this does allow him to open up with a bit of a quicker expansion and therefore more and more barracks as well. So it's a little bit of a deviation right here from Innovation, but one thing you can know for sure, Innovation is not gonna miss a beat when it comes to playing the macro game. I mean, this guy is known for just simply producing more stuff than his opponents. And it may sound a little bit funny, but sometimes you may see him lose a massive chunk of his army, but he still just comes back like nothing even happened. Now, Stats actually very heavily scouting right here, all over the map. Maybe he's actually lost a couple of games again against Innovation recently on this map, where Innovation was maybe putting down some cheeky buildings a little bit closer to the Protoss' main base. But this is a little bit odd here. Very heavy scouting and then jumping straight towards that third base. Now, Oracle is, of course, being chrono boosted out here as well. He's gonna try and do as much damage with that as possible, although usually it is rather difficult to get any kind of critical damage done with these units. Players have gotten very good at countering this, and of course, we saw that heavy marine production here coming out of Innovation already, actually timing out that missile turret in the main base as well perfectly to line up exactly with the arrival of any kind of potential Oracle. So Innovation not really taking any risks, and that's really, that's really one of the key characteristics, I suppose, of Innovation's play. He doesn't really take any unnecessary risks whatsoever. He usually doesn't really cut any corners either, which of course makes him predictable, but as long as he ends up winning the games, it doesn't really matter. Oracle did come in. It ended up killing one unit right there in total, but that's about it. Perfect deflection here so far by Innovation, but he is playing it very safe. Look at this. Innovation not really having that scouting information, right? He ended up going in there with the SCV, but right now he's forced to make that bunker just in case this Oracle is being followed up with a lot of Oracles, or rather with additional Oracles, or maybe, for example, a whole lot of Adepts here as well. Now, Stats, in the meantime, he's setting up that third base, and he's also going for a couple of Stasis wards. Very interestingly played right here, actually. Look at that. I wonder exactly what Stats is predicting here from his opponent. Of course, Innovation does not quite have a third command center just yet, only just now following it up with a starport as well. So maybe Stats is already assuming here that the Terran player in this match is indeed gonna go for a big push here very, very shortly. I would not be surprised with +1 attack finishing up here in just a little bit, with also, of course, Stimpack finishing up right now. There's definitely a chance that the Terran player in blue will make a move here across the map. He's even following it up with a missile turret, so I think that he plans on pulling all of these units indeed out of his bases, and he's gonna try and deal as much damage as he possibly can. And now please notice the amount of stasis wards going down here on this map. Oh, I love this. I love this. This is something that we haven't seen a whole lot of in StarCraft 2 whatsoever. I mean, stasis wards, of course, are used every now and then, but this is gonna hinder this Terran progression here very, very significantly. Terran does save up a couple of scans, but really not that much. One of the Marines immediately does get stasis, and another right there stims forward and activates another one of these stasis traps. Third command center does go down, but the oracles are right on top of that already, and that means that this commitment right here is gonna be rather big. Look at this. Innovation is being halted very aggressively. One Marine is moving forward, but a big chunk of that Terran force does get, you know, oh my god, that's actually really sick. So basically what's happening here, right? Stats knows that he's got the economy upper hand. He's buying a ton of time by placing down these stasis wards, and it allows him to just simply macro up a bigger force. I mean, when Innovation originally left his base, he definitely had that supply lead, right? But because of the eco right here, the longer that this goes on, the more the advantage and the bigger the army right here for stats will become. I mean, he cancelled that third base right there of his opponent. It's actually being rebuilt right now in the natural. But what exactly do you want to do right now if you are Innovation? I mean, you know that you're going up against a very scary, you know, 3-base Protoss army at this point. There's really no doubt about it, even though Innovation hasn't scouted this at this moment. I love those stasis traps right there, just simply buying a lot of time, knowing that he's going to be able to macro up a bigger force. And with that, of course, Innovation is essentially pushed into a very awkward little, you know, corner here. Does he want to commit to this aggression? It does look like that is going to be the case. At the exact same time, though, a Warp Prism is now making its way towards that natural here of the Terran player. There are still a lot of Terran units here available, though. Photon Overcharge does get forced. Units, of course, stimming forward right there. There are indeed 4 medevacs up in the air right now as well. But here we go. Warp Prism is unloading its units, and I think it's actually going to be heading straight into the main base here as well. At the same time, though, on the other side of the map, we do see the Terran army advancing towards that natural. Big warp in, however, inside of that main base. And actually, force fields going down. Stats going for the offensive push here, trying to back up right now towards the safety of that Photon Overcharge, dealing a huge amount of damage. 24 Terran SCVs go down, and Stats with some very, very clever stasis ward aggression ends up dealing a huge amount of damage, delaying that push here from the Terran player and just simply mustering up a far bigger force. The Innovation is forced to GG out right here in game number 1. Stats absolutely reading his opponent like a book in game number 1 right here. So here's what went down. Stats flew across the map with the first Oracle and noticed the lack of a third command center inside of the main base, which is where you normally put it down. He narrowed down the builds that the Terran player was going for just by simply judging the buildings and the timings, and he knew that it was more than likely going to be a +1 infantry weapons upgrade, push with Stimpack, and then maybe combat shield and a bunch of medeffects and whatnot as well. Instead of, however, warping in more adepts, which is usually the gold standard, he ended up making more oracles and put down a lot of stasis traps across the map. Rather than trying to use those oracles for harassment, he used them to buy time instead. Now, of course, depending on the, you know, the direction that Innovation's troops would take, there's a good chance that Innovation would just absolutely shut that down, but that was really well played there by the Protoss player in game number 1, something that we haven't really seen before, and I wonder what Innovation is going to follow it up with in game number 2 there, because in game number 1 he really did not find even a remote way of you know, coming back into that. I mean, Stats absolutely having his number right there, and I wonder how these kind of mind games get played as well, with BlizzCon coming up so very shortly, right? I mean, this is one of Innovation's gold standard builds. A lot of players have been copying that, and if you are indeed a Terran player yourself, I definitely would recommend doing something similar. I mean, it's one of the absolute standards for the Protoss versus Terran matchup that doesn't just only keep you safe in the early part of the game, but it also keeps you safe against adept harass and all kinds of other weird shenanigans that a Protoss can throw at you. Plus, it sets you up with a really nice timing push, right? Now, Innovation in game number 2, though, is opening up very, very similarly. Actually, only just now going for an SCV, and actually, he's not even scouting with it. Interestingly enough, skipping out that Reaper play here entirely as well, of course. He is going up against Stats, however, and Stats, of course, generally speaking, speaking, isn't really going to be taking any, you know, crazy build orders here either. But still, he is 1-0 behind, and that does mean that Stats does have an opportunity here to maybe go for some cheeky harassment himself here as well. So far though, none of that to be seen just yet. Stats building up his base very meticulously. If you are a Protoss player, by the way, same for what I just said for Innovation, feel free to copy Stats' builds. I mean, maybe the Oracle play is a little tricky to pull off, but still, this is such a cool way of playing. Also, his build order placement and his building placement rather is absolutely perfect, generally speaking. Now, interestingly enough, he put one of those pylons up in the corner over there. I think that Innovation just barely didn't see that. So this actually is rather important here for the Terran player, because of course Terran players at this level of play will end up, you know, counting the amount of pylons that are out on the map, and Innovation surely knows that one of them is potentially missing. It doesn't necessarily have to be the case, but he did not quite catch that second pylon there, hiding in the corner of the main base. And there's all kinds of silly little mind games that do indeed go on in a game like this, where the engineering bay is forced to be taken just a little bit earlier. Adept now making its way towards that high ground, trying to see if he can potentially do any damage here whatsoever. I don't think he wants to commit here, although he can. No, he's gonna end up canceling that shade there. But at the same time though, on the other side of the map, we do see that Oracle once again getting Chrono boosted out, and Splice Stats is not mixing it up here whatsoever. Looks like he's actually going to go for that third Nexus once again, very, very early on into this game. I actually think it's quite a bit earlier than he did in game number 1. Interestingly enough as well, he's actually delaying the Mothership Core here entirely, and just, you know, playing his opponent here. Look at that. He's playing his opponent. Against any other Terran player, you could, you know, expect all kinds of different harassments, right? But look at this. He has very limited scouting information, but what he does know is that Terran player here is, that the Terran player right here is more than likely just simply going to sit back. Doesn't even have a pylon right here inside of that natural, and only just now getting that Mothership Core out. Stats is not actually playing the matchup, but he's more or less playing the opponent, knowing precisely what it is that Innovation is more than likely going for. And I'm really impressed with this, because Innovation is not adjusting to this whatsoever just yet. I mean, sure, he knows that he's gonna go up against Oracles, because he, you know, he doesn't even need to scout that at this point. I mean, he's going up against Stats, who really does like his Oracle play. I don't think anyone is going to be surprised by that. And he actually ended up seeing the Oracle there, or at the very least the Stargate here nonetheless, but still. Innovation is looking to go for a very similar build that he did in game number 1, and I wonder what Stats is going to do in this particular match though. Look at that. Oh, I love that as well. Putting these adepts in these shades allows him to keep track of exactly what's going on without his opponent knowing that he has spotted that. So say if the Terran player would, you know, show a couple of Marines there, he could just simply shade the adept away and it would not actually be spotted. Just a little bit of additional information right there. Definitely always nice. Now, one of the Oracles running awfully low. Nice micro there, though, pulling it back. And I gotta say, I am genuinely impressed here with the way that the Protoss player is approaching this. Mixing it up just a little bit here. Going for that Twilight Council once again in combination of that Robotics Bay, however. Once again, going for that upgrade here, but immediately jumping into the Blink Stalker here as well. You must have realized here that Innovation is not gonna move out just yet, although Stimpack and +1 infantry weapons are shortly finishing up once more, and there is no third command center to be seen anywhere. So in the previous match, we saw the Stasis Trap, right? We saw those Stasis doing a lot of work. This time around, we're on a different map, a map that is quite a bit difficult, or quite a bit more difficult to do any damage on. So instead, Stats is going to use the energy right here to throw it right on top of all of those Marines, and of course, with that, he knows precisely where that Terran army is located. SCV making its way once again towards that third base location. He's going to be starting up the command center here as well, but I can't help but notice here that Stats already has a huge economy. He's gonna finish up these upgrades here very shortly. There's, you know, of course, the Mothership Core as well as Stalkers and whatnot available. And look at this, Stats absolutely reading his opponent like a book. That is gorgeous. That is absolutely brilliant play. I mean, what exactly are you going to do right now if you are the Terran player? Are you going to commit to this push? I mean, you certainly can if you want to. Of course, Innovation by no stretch of the imagination is out of this game just yet. But look at this. Nothing's even really remotely being done. Another revelation goes down on these medevacs, and Innovation, I mean, this is almost like him running away with his tail between his legs, right? I mean, look at it. These medevacs are absolutely being shut down, and Innovation, he is behind, economically speaking, at this point in the game. Not only does that mean that Stats is going to be able to muster up a big force and potentially go for a 4th base location, there's a good chance that he's going to make an offensive move now that +1 attack is done on these Stalkers, as well as Blink finishing up right at this point in time. He's immediately jumping into +2 attack right here for his units as well, but with this amount of gateways finishing up, I think that he wants to go for a push across the map. I think that Stats is making, you know, he's preparing himself right now for a push across the map. There's a lot of Protoss units here still at home. Of course, the Warp Prism doesn't quite want to take any unnecessary risks, knowing that there are still 2 medevacs out on the map somewhere. But now with the 3rd command center finishing up, though, at this point in the game, Innovation is slowly mustering up a bigger force. Look at that. Going for a much more Marauder-heavy army right now as well, which I do like a lot. Recognizing that, indeed, he is going up against a lot of Stalkers and Adepts here. We do see, by the way, the attack upgrade right here for the Adepts being researched as well. But Innovation, I mean, he's usually able to slow down his opponent just a little bit. Macro-wise, he is falling behind, and he just simply does not have the economy to properly manage this Protoss opponent. Once again, though, Oracles are indeed set up everywhere. Look at the map vision right here from Stats, right? He knows exactly what it is that the Terran player is doing. Although at this point in time, a couple of medevacs did make their way out on the map. And I don't know if this is going to be spotted. There is a lonely observer here above that high ground. But with the majority right here of the Protoss army on the other side of the map, this is starting to get a little bit scary. Warp Prism did end up dropping off a couple of the units. Did it actually end up dying here as well? No, there's still a single Warp Prism out. It actually made its way over here. That is a pretty important kill for the Terran player, because that means, of course, that a lot of these reinforcing units will not be able to make it, but that is not going to be the case, because Stats has a massive army. He can reinforce it very comfortably, and while the Widow Mines are now being dropped off on the other side of the map, there will indeed be quite a lot of detonation here going down, though. Ooh, look at that. 13 kills. Absolutely wonderfully done here. At the same time, 2 Adepts rather, made their way inside of that mineral line of the Terran's natural. But does it even matter? Is there not just simply way too much Protoss at this point in the game on the other side of the map? This is essentially an all-in right now, though. Innovation playing that very smartly, going for the counter-attack with those Widow Mines. But Stats playing his opponent rather than the matchup right here in this series. Reading Innovation like a book, and absolutely countering him at every single turn. Now, other than the Widow Mine explosions right there, in that main base as well as the 3rd base here at the end of this match, which really didn't matter in the grand scheme of things, I suppose, Stats played this absolutely gorgeously. Very well done. I mean, I've seldomly seen a series where Innovation seems to get outplayed, and in this series, it just simply was the case. Now, you gotta keep in mind, Innovation is, statistically speaking, probably the best player on the planet right now. The guy has got an insane win rate in every single matchup and every single opponent as well, but Stats seems to have his number. And I wonder what this means for BlizzCon, though, because they are more than likely gonna face off at some point during the tournament. This should be a lot of fun. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed watching this match. If you did, make sure you hit that like button down below, and if you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get a notification as soon as I upload more. Other than that, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? And I'll see you in the next one.